The Ode to the Old Pioneer Farmer Cemetery. Tucked away beyond the wheat fields, behind the weather-beaten fence of split pine, lies a cemetery that few passerby notice. It's not on a map, and no road sign bears its name. Wild grass sways over the crooked stones, and lynching blooms in the silence across names chiseled in an old century hand. This is the old Pioneer Farmer Cemetery of Washington State, a resting place for the forgotten stewards of the land, a whispering archive of sweat, hope, and hardship. It is not grand, but it is sacred. These burial grounds are neither polished nor manicured. They are humble, like the lives they commemorate. In the late 19th century, homesteaders and settlers, many of them immigrants from Scandinavia, Germany, and many other parts of Europe, staked their futures on the rough soil of Washington's Inland Empire. Drawn by the promise of free land under the Homestead Act and the mythic bounty of the West, they came with little but iron determination and the tools of a hard life. And when they died, some young from fever or childbirth, some old and worn from decades behind the plow, they were buried here, beneath the big sky, among the wheat they once planted. The stones bear names that once rang out in log cabins and schoolhouses. Some markers are hand-carved from local basalt or soft sandstone, the letters eroding as time chews gently at their memory. Others were made by local stonemasons who set up shop during the brief boomtown days, leaving behind a more polished legacy. Some graves are simply marked by a wooden cross, long bleached by sun and snow, or just not marked at all. A child's grave might be adorned with the broken remains of a porcelain doll. An old farmer's might be surrounded by a rusting fence made from farm tools, a makeshift border to keep memory in and forgetting out. To walk among these graves is to walk among ghosts, not in fear but in reverence. You see the stories written between dates. A mother lost at 29, buried with her infant daughter. A Civil War veteran who wandered west and died in obscurity. A whole row of siblings who perished within days of each other during the influenza of 1918. The silence here is heavy, with lives once filled with motion, threshing wheat, churning butter, repairing wagons, kneeling at church pews, singing hymns in accents now softened by time. The Pioneer Farmer Cemetery is a different kind of monument, one that doesn't trumpet its importance but humbly persists. Unlike the marble column cemeteries of cities, these rural plots are stitched into the landscape itself, often on family land or the edge of a former churchyard. They mark the intimate geography of settlement, the corner of the field where a son died in an accident, or the windbreak hill where a wife wished to rest, facing the sunrise. Washington State's geography is as diverse as its history. From the rain-drenched forests of the west to the dry hills of the Palouse in the east. But in nearly every county, especially east of the Cascades, there are these pioneer plots, testaments to the frontier's real legacy. Not conquest, but continuity. Not heroism in the Hollywood sense, but in the steady endurance of ordinary people who wrestled a life from stubborn land. These cemeteries are slowly disappearing from our memory. Time is the enemy, of course. Fences fall, brush overtakes headstones, weather erodes names, but so too is neglect. As families moved to cities or died out, many pioneer cemeteries lost their caretakers. Some were even swallowed by farmland. Others were relocated to make way for roads, railways, or progress of other sorts. In the worst cases, they've been forgotten entirely, disturbed without ceremony, their markers piled like stones with no meaning. Yet, amid the loss, there is also quiet reverence. Local historical societies, church groups, and volunteers still tend to many of these sites, brushing off moss, recording inscriptions, or mending fences. In some towns, annual decoration days are held, when children place flowers on the graves, and the elders tell stories about the people buried there. The past, even in its silence, insists on being remembered. To honor these resting places is not merely to indulge nostalgia. It is to acknowledge the invisible architecture of our modern world. The food we eat, the roads we drive, the towns we live in. These things rest on foundations laid by those buried in the soil. The Pioneer Farmer Cemetery is not just a collection of bones and stones. It's a ledger of sacrifice. It is a ledger of the people who didn't leave behind libraries or statues, but acres tilled and churches raised, families born, and a state carved out of the wilderness. And there is something profoundly interesting about these places. In the soil, the distinctions between rich and poor, known and unknown, vanish. Here lies the Norwegian immigrant who never learned English. Here lies the German woman who birthed 10 children and buried 4. Here lies the English laborer whose name never made it to the paper, but whose bones share the same earth. In death, they are equal, and in that equality is a lesson in of itself. Perhaps we need more pilgrimages to these small places, not for spectacle, but for grounding. In a world that often forgets the power of simplicity, the cemetery reminds us of what matters: family, work, community, and endurance. In the cracked headstone and the wild rose bush, and the silence broken only by bird song or the wind blowing through the wheat, we are invited to remember not just how these people died, but how they lived. So let this be an ode to the old Pioneer Farmer Cemetery, Washington's quietest treasure. May it never be polished into forgetfulness. May it never be lost beneath asphalt or apathy. Let the stones remain crooked. Let the grass grow wild. Let the past remain stubborn and visible, like the people it honors. And let those who pass by, even if only once, pause and say, "You were here, you mattered, and we remember."